Welcome to Christian Cliffhangers, Episode 3 with Thane and Michelle Woods.
I'm Michelle.
And I'm Thane.
On today's episode, we're discussing Unforgotten Road, written by Randall Arthur. He's been writing as a hobby since the late 1980s.
He and his wife have been missionaries since 1975, and he gets much of his inspiration for his novels from the mission field.
Welcome, Randall. We're so excited to have you today, to have a chance to talk with you and to share a little bit about who you are with our listeners. Would you like to start out by telling us some about your novel, Forgotten Road?
Thank you for allowing me to be your guest today. Forgotten Road is my fourth novel. I had three novels that were published in the 90s by large publishing houses, Multnomah and Word. But I was out of the market for about 13 years, and I released Forgotten Road, my latest novel, a couple of years ago, and I decided to self-publish it.
That's huge.
Well, the only reason I decided to self-publish it was that I knew I had a built-in fan base already out there.
Right, that helped.
It does, yes.
So what about the story behind it? What's something you want them to know about the story?
Well, I'm assuming that most of the people who will listen to this podcast are American citizens here in this great country. If you are an American and you own your own house and it has 2 or 3 bedrooms and you own 2 or 3 vehicles and your house has central heat and electricity and hot water and you own a lot of computers, you are in the top 3% of the most privileged people on the planet. And as an outsider, as one who's lived overseas and has come back into the States, it angers me when I hear pastors stand up and preach a prosperity theology and say to the people in the top 3% that you deserve more, you deserve better, you should not be content where you are. God wants to give you more. I think that's the epitome of ingratitude. And I wanted to write Forgotten Road to say, we have forgotten how to be content in gain or loss. Mm-hmm. We only know how to be content in gain in our country. And we'll always be discontent because we'll always be wanting more until we learn to be content in gain or loss.
Right. Yeah, that's very true.
Every author includes a bit of him or herself in their novels. Do you feel like you've done that with this novel?
More so with my first 3 novels.
Really? Yeah.
I'm an ordinary guy, but I've lived an extraordinary life. My life is rich with people and adventures and places. And I just have hundreds of stories that would work beautifully in a novel.
Yeah.
And my first 3 novels incorporated a lot of those stories. Forgotten Road required more of my imagination. There were parts of it, however, that are built on real-life experiences, but not as much.
Yeah.
How many of those motorcycle stories were true?
Every one of those were true.
Really?
Not to give anything away, but even the parachute one?
Yes.
Wow. That would have been something to see.
Wow.
And there were so many more stories out of that group that I wanted to bring into the book, but I had to eliminate a lot of them.
Right.
Yeah. For our listeners who don't know, you have actually a motorcycle ministry that you started, and it sounds amazing. Now, you had mentioned that in your previous books, you've included more of yourself and show your spiritual journey. You went from being very legalistic to swinging completely to the other side and then coming back in the middle. Is there anything that, looking back, that you would change because of what you know now?
Yes and no. When I was first coming out of my legalistic mindset, I was living in Norway. I was, 5,000 miles away from my peers. And I really wanted someone to put me under their wing. An older gentleman, a mentor, who maybe had already taken my journey and who could reassure me that everything was going to be okay and, put his arm around me and kind of give me a little hope.
Yeah.
I searched for someone like that and could not find them. Therefore, the character of Yoma, an old Burmese pastor and wisdom hunter, was created. I created him in place of someone real.
Now, in your latest book, Cole Michaels is the main character, and does he find a mentor like that too?
He does. And, I think everybody who struggles in life would benefit from, having a friend in their life who has been through their journey, who can just reassure them and share insights and wisdom. It's tough when you have to go it alone. Of course, I think God intended for the church to be full of mentors, and that we shouldn't typically have to go through these battles alone. Yeah. Unfortunately, in our churches, we all live behind masks, and we're isolated from each other and detached, and most people who are struggling feel like they're dying alone on the inside, and there's no one really to reach out and help them.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of battles, I had a hard time reading parts of this book because Michelle had already told me that certain parts were based on real-life stories. And like I said, I don't want to give anything away, but certain parts involving, a child, I just found very difficult. And just knowing that people have, gone through that in real life.
Right. Yeah, these were good friends of ours. And actually, it was the lady who was responsible that day. In the novel, it's the man that's responsible, but in the true story, it was the lady. And this happened the true story happened in 1986. Wow. The lady today, even though she has survived with her sanity, her personality continues to be very introverted, whereas before she was an extrovert, she was the life of the party. But ever since that day, she's just been quiet and hard to read. And I don't even know how she has survived, to be honest with you.
A parent losing a child is bad enough, but feeling the responsibility of their death, I can't imagine either one of those scenarios, and I hope I never have to go through that. I bet that's probably one of the hardest parts for you to write in the book.
Well, when I pull true life experiences, they act as a springboard, so automatically they give me a framework, so I know where I'm going. But everything that I write is difficult for me. It's not recreation because you have to pull the story out of your head one word at a time. Mm-hmm. And, then you have to often go back and change those words.
Yes.
But just one word at a time. And when you sit down to start at page 1 to write a book, it's daunting to even think, and I'm getting ready to write, 100,000 words. Yeah. And this is supposed to come together and look like something beautiful. It's daunting, and it's hard work.
Yeah. Speaking of sitting down to write another 100,000 words, I know you've got a nonfiction book that you're working on. What about another novel? Do you have ideas for another novel that you'll be doing in the near future?
I have 2 more stories in my head that I would like to put into a novel format. Yes. But I'm a slow writer.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not a full-time writer.
Right.
So I don't know that I will live long enough to...
So 2026 we can look forward to. You're going to make us wait 12 more years?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Do you ever see yourself becoming a full-time author?
No, I don't.
I was going to say maybe in your retirement, but when you work in missions and whatever, I don't know that you ever fully retire.
Yeah. Well, I've been in ministry for 39 years. I've been a missionary during that time. I lived in Europe for 22 years where I planted and pastored international churches. Over the last 14 years, I've been the European outreach minister for a non-denominational mission agency. Mm-hmm. And in that role, I introduce Americans to the mission needs of Europe. And I do that by taking them on 10-day trips to Europe and giving them a hands-on personal experience.
Are those are those mostly college students that you take, or is it, wide variety?
Mostly it's middle-aged
okay.
people. Yeah, from all over the country. But at this point, I've led about 76 teams.
Wow.
And I love what I do. So going back to the question, would I ever be a full-time writer? I'm a natural-born adventurer.
Uh-huh.
I'm an explorer. I'm not a homebody. So the idea of just sitting on my property and writing for 8 hours a day, day after day, no, I can't do that.
That would feel like prison for you, huh?
It would be, yes.
Well, we've got the technology now. You can just, take it wherever you want.
Well, when I do write, I write by hand first.
Oh goodness.
Wow. So when I'm writing a book, I'll have a pen and a piece of paper and a pad. And if I'm waiting at a grocery store for my wife, or if I'm in a parking lot. If I'm waiting for a business appointment, I'll pull it out and start writing. And, whenever I'm satisfied with a paragraph, then I'll bring it home and type it into the computer. But all the initial writing is done by hand.
Now, see, that's why it takes you so long.
Possibly.
But your stories are worth it. They're amazing. They really are. I've enjoyed what I've read, and I look forward to the 2 books that I haven't read yet.
Well, Jordan's Crossing of the 4, there's a story behind that one, and I won't waste your time today, but when it was published, I was really embarrassed. And I was embarrassed with that book for probably 15 years until the new publishing house that acquired the old one was willing to go back and make some changes. Well, so you have not yet read Wisdom Hunter or Betrayal?
No.
Okay, well those are my 2 favorites, so I think you'll enjoy those books.
I'm looking forward to it.
I think what you experienced there is pretty common for writers and creators, and you think about Star Wars. How many times has George Lucas gone back and changed his movies, the same movie, and put it back in the theater?
Yeah.
It's like, leave it alone, buddy.
Yeah.
I guess we should probably bring it back more to your latest novel. What research was different about this book than the others? You had a lot of scenes like set in a prison, and then I see some other things from what you've said that I can see you've pulled from your own life. I guess my question is, what other research did you have to do for this book that you didn't have to do for the others?
For the lengthy prison scenes, I did have to do some extensive research. And since the prison is in the book, since it's in the Nashville, Tennessee area, I wanted to find a real prison.
Yeah.
And, learn all about how it looked from the outside and the inside, and talk to someone who could fill me in on the typical schedule of a prisoner there from day to day. So I was eventually directed to the district attorney in Nashville, and he was very cordial, very willing to help. So I probably drove him crazy over a 1-year period, just with all my phone calls.
Yeah.
And, hey, it's Randy again. Oh, okay. I'm hoping to actually travel to Nashville in the next 3 or 4 weeks and give copies of Forgotten Road to some of the music executives on Music Row, and also to the DA.
Did you do research with the Music Row there in Nashville then? Because you've got, most of the book is about the music.
Well, I'm not a musician, but I love music. And, I know a lot of people who are musicians. I've taken a lot of musicians with me on these trips to Europe. And I belong to the home church of Casting Crowns.
Oh, wow.
So
my friend's favorite group.
Yeah.
I was curious the whole time I was reading this. Have you actually heard somebody who plays music like what you described in this book?
Yes.
That is so, I would love to hear that.
Well, I guess I can go ahead and recommend a new group, huh?
Yes,
yeah, go
please
for
do.
it.
I'm assuming that you and maybe most of your listeners have never heard of this group, but they're very well known throughout Europe. But it's a duo, a husband and wife. The husband is Norwegian and the wife is Irish. He writes all the music and plays the keyboard, and she plays the violin and occasionally sings. But the group is called Secret Garden, and most of their music is very instrumental, very melancholy, very emotional. I would encourage you to check them out on YouTube or Secret Garden.
I'll do that.
I had actually, when I was finishing your novel the other night, I looked up one of the bands that Cole mentions, the Sugar Baker Ladies, just to see if it was real on YouTube. I'm like, wait a minute.
That one is not.
I got Golden Girls. I'm like, either they're just not known at all, or he just made it up.
There's a little story behind that. I have 3 children, 2 daughters and a son, and my son, who's the youngest of the 3, is now 17. But probably 4 or 5 years ago, we were in the car one day and just having fun, and something came up about Sugar Baker Ladies. We had heard something that was a tongue twister, and we kept working with it, and finally came up with that little phrase, and it was funny, and we laughed, and I said, I'm going to use that in the book one day. And he said, no, you won't. It was kind of a bet.
Now, see, and that's where the pad of paper comes in handy.
Well, I kind of wondered if there was a story there.
Yes, there was.
When you are writing, do you actually outline before you write your story, or is it just kind of all in your head, you know where you're going, and that's You just kind of go with the story and let the story almost write itself?
No, I've talked to a lot of writers throughout my life, and every writer is unique, and they all have their own method. However, I do not start writing on page one until I've developed the story fully from beginning to end in my head.
Oh, okay.
So I work, maybe sometime for a year or more just with the story. Rework it. And when I think I know this person and they're real to me, and I know the details of all they've gone through, then I sit down and start with page one. And so I know where I'm going. I know where I'm going to end. I think one of the most satisfying comments I've ever received from a reader was from a lady years ago who said, "Randy, during the days that I was reading Wisdom Hunter," she said, "my heart just went out to your main character, Jason Faircloth." And she said, "I could feel his agony and his pain." And she said, "I was just so burdened for him." She said, "One day driving home from work," she said, "I was coming down the interstate. I pulled over into the emergency lane and I stopped and I prayed for Jason Faircloth."
Oh my goodness.
That name sounds very familiar. Is he in the latest book?
Yes, he is.
Oh, okay.
He's the fill-in pastor in Florida.
I thought so. Okay, well, great.
And is he in all of your books? He was in Jordan's Crossing.
Yeah, he's the main character of the first book.
I can't wait to read that then.
And he's a secondary character in the other three. He's the common denominator in all of my books.
Now, I'm looking at your screen right here, and I'm wondering, now, is your wife just as adventurous as you are? Do you take her on these motorcycle trips? And
my wife has lived an extraordinary life as well, but she's not a risk taker like I am. She is adventurous. She left the United States when she was just 19.
Oh, goodness.
I took her to Norway, and she said goodbye to her family when she was just a teenager.
Wow.
And, she learned the language in Norway within 6 months and was teaching Norwegian kids in their own language.
That's amazing.
She learned German on her own in about 6 months. I mean, she graduated from college at the age of 18.
Oh, my goodness.
So I married way above myself. She's the founder and CEO of her own nonprofit.
Now, is she ever going to write books?
Probably not.
She sounds like an amazing lady.
She is. I've never come across anyone who has met my wife who didn't like her.
Oh.
She's one of those rare individuals that everybody just loves.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us today.
We've enjoyed getting to talk and getting to know you some more. I'd love to sit and just visit with you and hear all the stories that you have. Sounds amazing.
Well,
we'll have to chat some more sometime. This is a fun question that we like to ask everyone we interview, or I like to ask. How do you take your coffee?
Well, your readers might be shocked. I maybe drink 2 cups of coffee a year.
It's funny. Most of the authors we've talked to are like, "Oh, I don't really drink coffee."
Yeah.
Really? That's okay. I'm surprised. But
they're not our age.
maybe 2 cups of coffee a year, and it doesn't matter to me if it's black or has sugar or cream. I don't care.
That's funny.
Let me just say that if any of your listeners, want to get copies of my books,
yes,
that I do have a website, Randall Arthur, Randall with 2 L's, ARTHUR.com. And they can find all of my books there. And any book that's ordered from my website will be autographed. And any book ordered from our website also will help us in our ministry.
That's awesome.
You can find the books on Amazon as well. They are available in an e-reader format through Amazon.
Oh, that's good to know. Maybe Thane can read them on his phone.
I will make you sign those.
Yeah. Now, can I ask you guys a question?
Yes.
Sure.
I understand you're writing a first novel. Are you allowed at this point to tell me publicly what it's about?
Yeah, we finished the first novel, and Michelle's entered it in several contests, and we're working on the second part, but I'll let her go ahead and tell you about the...
There's a group called Hope, which is helping other people endure. And this is a group of different professionals from, wide range walks of life, and they've gotten together to form this group called Hope in order to help other people who can't get the help that they need through traditional means And this first novel is about a kidnapping, and a lot of Americans know what Amber Alerts, but there's a lot of kidnapping cases where the police are limited by what they can do because of the guidelines in the Amber Alerts. And so through our research, we discovered some of that, and we've included that in our story. Now then, we've also used a few aspects of that in our second novel, Same Group with Hope, and it actually involves human trafficking, which has been just horrible research, just heart-wrenching research to do, and to find out, here we are in Kansas, the land of Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. Who would think that such horrible things would happen? But it's in the top 3 worst cities in the United States for human trafficking.
And which city is that?
Kansas City and Wichita here in Kansas, both of them. And I think a big part of it is we're so naive that it goes on. It's not, everybody thinks, well, yeah, they understand that all of this goes on outside of the country and these girls are brought here, but there's a lot of kidnapping that occurs inside the country because we're so naive, and these girls get mad at their families and may run away, or they, meet somebody on Facebook or whatever, and then they get pulled into it. And because we are central, then there's the main highways that go north and south and the ones that go east and west, where they can transport them immediately. So the girls that are kidnapped are taken to Hollywood or to New York or wherever. Yeah, your book involved some human trafficking. Did you see that a lot, or like you were just aware that it happens and had that in the story?
When I conceived the story of Forgotten Road, it was probably 10, 11 years ago. And human trafficking wasn't a well-known issue here in the States. It wasn't talked about a lot. And I wanted to help provoke people to think about it. Of course, it took me 10 or 12 years to write the book, and during that time, human trafficking has become an issue that people talk about. So my book doesn't introduce it, or it doesn't maybe provoke a lot of people to think about it, but it just reminds them that it does happen. I had taken a mission team to Barcelona, Spain. We approached our hotel, which was right in the center of the city. And this team was from a very conservative place in Georgia. And when we got to the hotel, there were prostitutes standing all around outside soliciting for customers. And, this was 9:00 in the morning.
Oh.
And bless this team's heart, they're very conservative. They're from the mountains of Georgia. And they'd never seen a prostitute, and they were very uncomfortable. And they gathered together and asked me to consider finding another hotel. And I said, guys, it's very likely that many of these girls, if not most of them, are here against their will. They've probably been trafficked. It's very likely that their moms and dads don't even know where they are. And suddenly, it gave the team a different perspective. And so they said, okay, we'll stay here and we'll pray for these girls. And I said, well, good. We'd been there 2 days when a couple of the ladies and a man approached me and said, is there any way that we can talk to some of these girls? And I said, sure. I said, tonight after our other ministries, we can go out. And I said, this could be dangerous. It could be risky. I don't know if their pimp is watching. I'm sure he must be from one of the windows, from one of the alleyways. And if we interfere, I don't know what they will do, especially if these girls are trafficked. And they said, we're willing to take the risk. And I could tell you, I could spend an hour telling you about some of the stories that unfolded. But one of the girls, we walked up to her, and we were a group of 4. We walked up to her, and she was standing in a doorway on a dark street, and she'd been crying. And we asked her if she could speak English, and her English was broken, not very well. But our ladies motioned or gestured, can we give you a hug? And the lady just fell into their arms and cried and cried and cried. And she wouldn't let them go. I mean, they were there for 15 minutes just hugging her and holding her.
Wow. That gives me goosebumps.
Yeah.
Well, it's awesome how God has used you throughout these years, and just thinking about everything that He has planned for you in the future. It's awesome that you have opened your life to the ministry and to doing what God is asking you to. And if we think about it, we are all in a ministry, and God can use us all every day. Like you said, you're an average person. Your experiences are just a lot more amazing than what we experience every day. Maybe sometime in the future we can chat again.
Tell you what, if you read Wisdom Hunter and enjoy it, contact me and we'll do another interview about that one.
Okay, that's
All right,
a plan.
well, thank you very much.
That's a plan.
All right.
Yeah, thank you so much for visiting with me.
Thank you for allowing me to be your guest.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, bye-bye.
Take care.
All right, thank you.
Keep an eye on our site for the bonus material podcast with Randall.
It contains extra material, including how he got published and some other great stories.
Thanks again to Ambrose for the music we used today. We'll see you next time.